Domestic violence is on the increase here in the East Midlands. It's become a high priority for the newly elected police and crime commissioners. So let's take a look at the figures from our police forces and local authorities. In Leicestershire, it's up from almost 12,500 2 years ago to more than 17,000 last year. In Nottinghamshire, there's been a rise of more than 3,000 to over 19,600, while in Derbyshire it's risen too, up almost 1,000 to just under 19,700. Well, in a moment we'll be hearing how one force is tackling this problem, but first we've been to Leicester to hear from an advisor who works on the front line helping people who've been victims of violence from their partners, and she's seen an increase in people seeking help.
I know there's a lot of people because I've been volunteering and I've been supporting a lot of people. I mean, it's mostly women, but there is some men that are in domestic violent relationships, and there's somewhere for them to go. You know, with victim support, you get the emotional support, you get some practical support, but nobody tells you what to do.
Well, joining us to discuss this issue is Chris Cutland, who's the Deputy Police and Crime Commissioner for Nottinghamshire. I have to say, Chris, you actually managed a women's aid charity before you took on this new post, and so you know that this is a really big problem, and it's one that you know very well. This alarming rise in Nottinghamshire, cases of domestic abuse, up more than 3,000. What are you doing about it?
Well, actually, I don't think it is alarming. I think it's that the domestic violence is being reported. It's reported domestic violence. What we know is that 1 in 3 women in this country experience domestic violence at some point in their life.
Is that not alarming?
It's an exceptionally alarming number, but more people reporting to the police can only be a good thing.
Well, they're doing their bit by reporting it, but what are you doing about it to stop it happening?
We're making sure that the police are staying on top of domestic violence. It was one of the priorities in the Police and Crime Commissioners Plan in Nottinghamshire this year. It's actually a priority for many of the Police and Crime Commissioners Plan. Domestic violence isn't just about the police working hard at it. It's all about partnership working. It's about making sure that organisations are funded properly, voluntary sector organisations are funded properly to be able to support both women and men. It's about making sure that health are doing their part. It's about making sure that even education are doing their part, because there has to be a preventative element as well.
Well, I mentioned that Chris worked in women's aid. That was her background. So she's come to this with all this experience. And actually you left your job to raise the profile of this very issue, didn't you?
I did indeed. I thought it was really important that I had listened to victims for 7 years, victim stories for 7 years, and I bring that perspective into the Police and Crime Commissioner's office.
Money matters on something like this. If you don't have the money to fund these projects, that is a big issue. Jessica Lee, are you putting the money in to help make a difference on this?
I think so, yeah. First of all, £40 million has been ring-fenced. It's a real priority for government. And there are ministers such as Helen Grant, and there's other MPs such as me who've got a background working in family law, working for years with victims of domestic violence, understanding how difficult it can be to report and take action and get out of these difficult situations. Having said that, once the money is allocated, of course, it's then up to local authorities and police and crime commissioners to see,
I mean, if you choose to prioritise this as an issue.
It's been a big priority in Leicester. 2 homicides every year in Leicester related to domestic violence. I ran a charity called the Maternity Alliance before I became an MP, and saw how most new cases of domestic violence start when women are pregnant. That is horrific for the mothers and can absolutely destroy the life chances of children. So the NHS, midwives, health visitors have a role to play.
Do you know what Leicestershire Police have told us? They say that they don't actually mind the figures going up. They don't see it as alarming either, just so that you know, Chris, but they see it as a sign that at least more people are coming forward.
Absolutely, and you can make some very practical changes. You know, if you are in any pubs or clubs in Leicester, you often see the phone number on the back of toilet doors. We can make a big difference in saying, come forward, this is not acceptable. We all have to play our part.
There has been a very hard-hitting campaign, and I think lots of organisations and agencies have taken this up. So midwives are now trained. It's called Ask the Question. People are asking all the time if women are safe, if they feel safe, if somebody's hurting them. It's a standard question that midwives and health visitors now ask.
Well, Nottinghamshire is actually one of the areas that's piloting Clare's Law, which is this scheme that lets women look up details of their partner's past. But how many people are actually using this? It's a one-year trial which started last September. How many are taking it on?
It's a one-year trial, and unfortunately, I haven't got the figures on me, but it's slightly less than we thought would take it up. There's lots of reasons why women don't take it up. It's a very complicated thing to do. It's very bureaucratic, quite rightly it has to be. And women, it doesn't necessarily make them any safer. It is only if the perpetrator of that crime has got a conviction or is known to the police.
Features in, I would say, a lot of the time. And the campaigns that are being running, the ones that Liz mentioned, you know, you need to access people where they're going to be, where they feel comfortable having that information, and following on. Once the police have taken their role, the good news is as well, when it goes to the prosecuting authorities, there's also an increase as well in the conviction rates for domestic violence and rape,
One
which
of
is
the things
positive.
I think that we need to do to take this whole agenda forward is learn from what we did with the Youth Justice Board nationally, brought all the partners together, set clear minimum standards, got the joined up working. We're actually looking at whether we should have a similar thing on domestic and sexual violence. I think that would make sure high standards in some parts of the country are achieved in all parts of the country.
Is it something that we've not done enough on in the past?
We haven't done enough on it in the past.
Okay,
we haven't done enough to
right.
get the different agencies
Well, what about
together.
police and crime commissioners? Do you think they're making an impact in this area? Because you say that you're all working together with the communities and you're more sensitive to these issues because you're working so much closer.
Yes.
But is it making a difference?
I think we have to wait a little while to see what difference police and crime commissioners make, but it's on most police and crime commissioners' agendas to make sure that domestic violence stays a very high priority.
Well, they're lucky that they have you, Claire, in Nottinghamshire. We want to see people as passionate as Claire in all parts of the country. And I think that we might have a better chance of that if we had something similar nationally, bringing all the different parties together.
I would also say another issue, it is about accessing young people and making them aware. So that's why the government, for example, are looking perhaps at a change in law, at reducing the age at the age that somebody can bring a conviction for domestic violence down to 16, 17, and including things like coercive control. You know, this is the reality, and the statute needs to move with the times.
Before you go, Chris, everyone's talking this week about how much the police and crime commissioners are paying staff, how many they're recruiting. You've been appointed by Paddy Tipping. Are you all worth it?
I hope we're all worth it. And what I don't think the public realise is that we actually took on staff. We inherited staff from what was there before the police authorities. So in actual fact, our office costs slightly less than it did before.
OK, Chris Cutland, thanks very much indeed for joining me.